Hey, I returned home from Tulum earlier this morning and I spent 17 days in paradise there. I arrived to Eduardo Castillo, Misty, and their daughter Akani's house on December 19th. And Eduardo's my soul brother, Misty's my soul sister, and Akane, I guess, would be my soul niece or something like that. And Eduardo owns a Habitas, which is this absolutely miraculous and magical eco resort in Tulum, with the most beautiful architecture that's integrated amongst the jungle, and everything they do there is sustainable. So, like any trees they cleared, which were very few in terms of building this whole eco resort, they really integrated it amongst the naturally occurring landscape there. But when they did have to remove a tree, they would then plant a great deal more, and so they would always put back more than they ever modified. And the food at this place is absolutely astounding. Um, it's right on the ocean. There's yoga, acro yoga, different healing modalities, sound therapies, Mayan traditions, and it's a really special place. Musical performances as well, which I'll talk more about. And Eduardo also happens to be one of the world's greatest musicians, incredibly multifaceted, incredibly powerful. And I started listening to him about 3.5 years ago, initially his DJ sets, and then I saw him play for the first time in person atop the Mayan Warrior bus at Burning Man in 2015. And it was during that set that, for the first time, I consciously had two-way telepathic conversations with music, during which other dimensional beings were flowing through the music to teach me, to teach all of us about love. And I actually wrote an article called "Telepathically Communicating with Music and Other Superhuman Abilities" that I will link below in this YouTube video. Um, Furthermore, this most recent summer, Eduardo played at a festival called Camp Summer Days outside of Toronto, and he performed this sit down live performance that was truly astounding, during which I had another other dimensional experience whereby I was immersed in these golden and black and white lights, and I was channeling all of these different energies, and the sounds were flowing through my body. And I actually wrote an article about that experience as well, called Camp Summer Days and the Continually Unfolding Magic of Our Universe. I'll link that below as well. But just so you know, for the purpose of this story, ever since that first set at the Mayan Warrior with Eduardo, I've been having two-way telepathic conversations with music and the beings that flow through the music. So that experience was a profound unlocking for me, and I've spoken with Eduardo at length about these experiences. So I feel a very special connection with him because I often consider music to be my greatest teacher. I can learn a lot from listening to, let's say, a podcast with Elon Musk and Richard Branson. However, I will learn more by putting on one of Eduardo or one of my other favorite DJ's sets. Um, and I think somewhat because music isn't defining or confining, and it's open to interpretation, and what I learn through it is so vast and creative and multidimensional and all-encompassing, and can't necessarily quantify or define each and everything that I'm learning from it, and or the timeline by which I understand or internalize the lessons. But I just know, based on my intuitive draw towards music, that it is incredibly teaching for me. And About a year ago, I had this vision. I can't remember if it was during a dream or a meditation, but Eduardo and I and a group of our mutual friends were in an ancient, futuristic Egyptian setting amongst pyramids, and there was a lot of gold. Everyone was painted in gold, and Eduardo was painted in gold and blue on his face, and he was a pharaoh of some sort, and all of us were these multi-dimensional royal beings. And not necessarily royal in a hierarchical sense, but simply these divine beings of love. And it had quite a celebratory and heavenly feel about it. And so when prior to going down to Tulum, I wanted to bring a gift for Eduardo, Misty, and Akane. And I was thinking of what I should bring them, and the idea of mezcal came to mind. But I figured they live in Mexico, they own a hotel, they're probably surrounded by a lot of mezcal, and also Akane is less than 3 years old, so she's probably not going to drink too much alcohol. So in trying to come up with an appropriate gift, I asked Pandora what she thought would be great for them. And after about a minute in silent contemplation, she and I both spoke at the same time, and I said a spirit drum, and she said a chakra drum, literally at the exact same moment. And spirit drum and chakra drums are these two variations of a very beautiful instrument that's somewhat akin to a hang or a turtle shell drum, if you're familiar with that. They play these absolutely beautiful, beautiful sounds. Um, and so Pandora took me to the store she works at called Alternative Thinking, where they sell chakra drums. And upon arrival, I see that there is only one left, and it's gold and has blue drumsticks. So without prior to even playing it, I knew I was going to get it for them. And then when I picked up the drumsticks and hit the drum, it confirmed how perfect this gift would be for them. Um, so yeah, so then I spent a number of days at their house, and they were just honestly the most hospitable people, just absolutely incredible. And I went to Habitas a few times. I got a massage there from this incredible, incredible woman named Marie Elena. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I spent 2 hours with her, and she asked me what I would like to work on if I had any ailments, and I didn't. I felt and continue to feel amazing. So I asked what she likes to focus on, and when I asked her that, she spoke for a couple of minutes and named off so many different modalities, ranging from deep tissue to Swedish massage to cranial sacral work to Reiki and other forms of shamanism and energy healing. Um, to abdominal massage and certain Mayan traditions and sound therapies, and I realized how well versed and how much she devoted her life to these practices. So I asked for her intuition to guide us, and throughout the course of those 2 hours, I've never experienced such a powerful and beautiful and perfect professional massage, and the connection she had with my body was, I mean, she's so empathetic that she knew exactly what I wanted without me articulating anything. And it was a full body massage and combined all these different modalities where she was playing her flute at some times during it and playing different sounds, and I would occasionally silence the music so that I could feel the ocean waves integrating with the massage. And I was having a multi-dimensional experience where I was seeing all these black and white and yellow lights, and sensing this Mayan prowess. Um, it was a very psychedelic experience, and deeply rejuvenating and healing. Um, and one day I traveled with Julia, this amazing angel who teaches yoga at Habitas, and we went to Chichen Itza, which are these Mayan ruins. And the moment we arrived, we dropped to our knees because the energy is so palpable, so magnetic, so strong. And these sounds started flowing through me like, and I could have stopped them, but they weren't really voluntary either. And I was having this vision of this red sun with tentacles emanating from its core, and the Mayans being this sun worshipping culture, which I wasn't consciously aware of in the moment. And furthermore, they play this sport where the winner of the games were sacrificed Um, so the Mayans had a different perspective on death um, than most people living in the Western world do, in that death was a gift, um, which I know it is as well, um, and so is life. And the next day I went to the Koba ruins with this amazing brother named Jeff Goldford, who I met through Eduardo, and Jeff is a very special man, and his musician's name is Goldford, gold like the metal, Ford like the car, all one word. And I encourage you to look him up because his voice is, oh man, it is a miracle. And you're going to know it the moment you hear it that there's something happening with this guy. It's so beautiful. Wow. Yeah. So he and I explored the Koba ruins and hiked atop them, and just magical. And then I went to Ahau, which is this another amazing eco resort on the beach in Tulum. And it turns out that my friend JP, who I've been friends with since this summer and talking to regularly regarding cryptocurrency, he happens to co-own Ahau, which I didn't know. And when I saw him, he told me that they were having the opening party there on December 28th, which also happened to be his birthday. And he said to me, he's like, can you tell Eduardo that I really want him to play the closing set for my birthday? And I was like, I mean, aren't you friends with him? Aren't you guys already in touch? And he's like, yeah, but the more people he hears it from, the better. So yeah, we set that up, and then yeah. So anyway, then Habitas was having this New Year's Eve experience from December 27th to December 3rd, which initially I was not intending to partake in. I knew it was going to be a profound and beautiful experience. It's just that I had so many friends in Tulum, all of whom I wanted to see and spend a couple days with, and the Habitats New Year's experience is the whole thing's curated, and it's very much a container in that Eduardo and his team guide everyone. They'll guide all 150 guests through an experience that's beautifully curated, and they ask all the guests to simply trust them, to trust Eduardo and his team, and they don't really give any details, but just trust that everything will be taken care of and that'll be magical. Um, and so Eduardo invited me for a couple of the days to join in, and I went on the 28th because Jeff Goldford was singing a live acoustic set, and then Tone of Arc, amazing DJ, did this live performance. He combines guitar and singing and DJing, and it's fucking awesome. And he just had this dance floor, these like Persian carpets out underneath the starry night sky at Habitas, and within 5 minutes it was so ecstatic and expressive on this dance floor. A lot of people dressed in white, just joyous, so joyous laughs and smiles, people from all around the world. The people at Habitas, both the staff and the guests, are so truly astounding and special, so special, beautiful inside and out, and really loving people. And so it was just a wonderful dance floor. There was mezcal tasting and just just phenomenal. And then I met this guy named Mac, who our friend Tyler McLeod, who's my brother, who's also working at Habitas, and he introduced Mac and I, and Mac and I had each been aware of one another's dancing because we're both wild men when we dance, and also very in touch with our feminine. And Tyler's like, "You guys got to meet." And Mac and I didn't even say anything to one another. We just started dancing and contact dancing and rolling around with one another and picking one another up, and like very primal and ecstatic. And then after a while, just everyone joined in and started screaming and celebrating underneath the moon and the stars in the the Yucatan Peninsula. I think that's where it is anyway. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, in Tulum in the jungle along the beach, and then we made our way to Ahau, where Eduardo played a set from I think like 2 a.m. till 6 a.m. and holy fuck, it was pure fire, and there must have been 1,000 or more people on the beach all the way backing up to the ocean. It had a very loving and Burning Man-esque vibe there, with a lot of burners are there for sure. But yeah, like fucking amazing. Um, just so much love, so much love. Um, and then on the 30th, there's a boat cruise as part of the Habitas experience, and Eduardo and his brother Jose were DJing it, and I was dancing, and there's a water slide off the boat, and just dancing with Mac and Tyler, having a great time. Everything's taken care of on this boat. Delicious food, delicious drinks, like everything. And I started really getting, and I mean, Eduardo's playing insane music, and the sun setting out on the ocean, and like so special. And I just ended up dancing with so many goddesses. They were approaching me, and I was interacting with them, and so many beautiful, beautiful goddesses inside and out. And then one in particular came up to me, and it was instant magnetism. Like, holy fuck, our bodies just combined, and we were kissing and moving with one another and feeling one another. And the first words she and I said to one another were, "I love you." Eduardo got on the microphone and said, "Turn to the person next to you and just give them a hug and tell them that you love them." Um, and it certainly did not seem like a mere coincidence that we were saying "I love you" to one another, and we continued dancing for about an hour, and it was so sensual. And it immediately was like me fully embodying the masculine and her fully embodying the feminine and surrendering in a form of intimate communion, um, and in a way that we were moving in a way. When I was younger, I would have felt apprehensive about behaving this aggressively, let's say, but then in understanding and in feeling and just in intuitively knowing that she was into this, you can have the most animalistic and primal and loving and passionate interactions where both parties are fully immersed in it with one another, and it's powerful. Like really unlocking your sexual essence and embodying it. And so we danced for a long time. Eduardo closed with Nirvana's "Entertain Us," and everybody was thrashing and banging around and going crazy. And then, yeah, as we were leaving, Natalie and I said, we introduced ourselves and got one another's names, and then we rode the bus back together. There were shuttles going from the cruise, the boat launch area, to Habitas, which is about a 2.5 hour ride. And she and I sat beside one another on the bus, and we didn't talk. We were just kissing and love making on the bus. Our clothes were on, but we were making love and being so intimate. And I was in a dream state, and doing things that I guess I probably normally wouldn't in public, but like my hand was on her vagina, and it wasn't like she had her clothes on, but it was like facing the aisle. But everyone on this bus is so loving and non-judgmental and supportive, even to the point that when we were disembarking and Natalie went to the bathroom for a while, two of the other women who were sitting right across from us, one of them named Rosie, they both said to me and held my hand. They were like, "You are so beautiful," and that was the most beautiful thing we've seen. Just the interaction that Natalie and I were sharing, because it was so loving and intimate. And so then Natalie and I walked back to amongst everybody, walked back to Habitas, and there was this beautiful candlelit dinner. The food and just the ambiance there is like you need to experience it. I hope everyone in the world gets to experience it, because it is so beautiful and magical. And then after dinner, we made love under the stars and the moon against the ocean, and it was really special. And again, like pure magnetism, full surrender on the feminine's part, and total embodiment of the masculine on my part, and like a really divine and loving union of love. Um, and yeah, so the next day was New Year's Eve, and I arrived back. I went back to an Airbnb for a while, and then I came to the. I returned back to Habitas, and we were doing this Mayan tradition where everybody got naked, and we were rubbing this clay onto ourselves and onto one another. A clay that's intended to extract anything that we want to release, any toxins we want to let go of from our body, and then you rub that all over your body, and then run into the ocean and let it all wash away, and it really boosts your mood and your energy. So we did that, and it was interesting because I was anticipating that Natalie would be there for New Year's. This woman who I've fallen in love with, and she lives in Stockholm, Sweden. That's where she's from. And yeah, so I assumed she would be there. It's New Year's Eve, and but she wasn't. And then we had dinner, and I was with Mac, and he had fallen in love with Natalie's roommate named Yoy. And so he and I were joking. We're like, we're like a couple of lost puppies right now without our girls and or our women. And so we were like, yeah, I guess it's a lesson in detachment for sure. And so I knew everything's all right, and I'm gonna find her at some point. She and I will find one another. But I'm still going through the emotions of, because just in my head I thought we would spend New Year's together, and New Year's tends to be a special night. So I guess maybe like a slight degree of disappointment, but also with the frame of mind, the knowing that it's all going to work out the best way imaginable, because that's how life works. It always works out the best way imaginable. That's how you create it. That's how we all create it together. And that's what we're doing. And so any hardship is really there so that it makes our life as enriching as possible, so that we have the most incredible experience imaginable. And so yeah, having this frame of knowing that, like, okay, she's not here for a reason, because it's going to be better when we do find one another, but still needing to process the emotions. So I sat on a hammock, and my body was feeling pretty relaxed and tired from, like, 10 days already, just dancing and moving a lot and playing a lot and having just really wonderful times. Um, and I was just feeling in a very chill mode, so I sat on a hammock, and then I started dancing for a bit and had a couple of drinks of mezcal, this incredible pina colada mezcal. And Goldcap was playing, who's one of my favorite DJs in the world. And then around 5 a.m., that's when I really started to feel like, okay, I don't think Natalie's coming tonight. Totally cool. I'm sure she's off exploring somewhere, having an amazing time, and really accepting that. And then deciding, you know what, like, I want to go on a psychedelic adventure tonight. So it's around 5 a.m. And Stacy, who was the angel who I journeyed with during my very first Burning Man, she lives in New York, and she happens to be at Habitas as well throughout this week. So she and I are really vibing, and it's all love between her and I. We're good friends now, and she's like, hey, what do you need? And I'm like, you know what, I would love to do mushrooms or LSD right now. And she's like, okay, I'll be right back. Within like 10 seconds, she's like, here, have the whole thing, and brings me a mushroom chocolate. And then this other girl walks up to me like 10 seconds later and like takes a bite of something. She's like, hey, do you want to share this with me? And gives me another half of a mushroom chocolate. And then these guys from Israel are like, hey, do you want any MDMA? And I take a little bit of that. So like all within the span of like 3 minutes, take these mushrooms and then this MDMA, and then I'm sipping on this pina colada mezcal of, like, made with real coconut and pineapple that and mezcal that Mac had invented the recipe for, and literally, like, I would drink it as a fruit smoothie every day of my life. I mean, I don't drink much alcohol, but like, even with it, it tasted so good and so healthy that, hey, maybe I would. And yeah, just having great conversations. Like, I could go on forever about the caliber of people here and how wonderful they are, how inspiring each and every person at Habitas is, and how loving they are. Like, so incredible. I made like hundreds of deep, deep connections that I'm sure will last a lifetime. And yeah, so then I knew that Mar de Leva was going to play a sunrise set on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. And Mar de Leva is the name for when three currents merge together in the ocean, and they merge and then they become one entity. And then that energy that they create is then spread out amongst all of the ocean and then all of the world. And Eduardo told me that he knew he would work on a project, perhaps a business of some sort called Mar de Leva. At some point in his life, he's known this since he was a little kid, since he loved the word Mar de Leva and what it means. And and recently, I think it was within the last year or two, that he met these two guys, a violinist and a sitar player, and they realized that they're here to create music together. And one day while driving, Eduardo played one of their, like a 22-minute performance they had done. And I started crying. Like, I sat with my eyes closed and I started crying. It's it is absolutely unlike anything I have ever heard before. It it's a miracle, like truly a miracle. And so I was really excited because I knew this sunrise set was going to occur. And there were even moments where I thought, oh, maybe I should go explore, like Tulum on New Year's. There's a lot happening, and but I knew I wanted to be there for the sunrise. And so at Habitas, they oriented these Persian carpets all along the beach, and then pillows all around in a circle for like 150 people. And then Eduardo, the violinist, and the sitar player sat in the middle. And I sat down and I met this guy named Philip, originally from Munich. And the moment he and I started talking, I felt this brotherly connection between us. And I closed my eyes and I was in another dimension, and I was relating to Philip that, hey man, I am simultaneously with you and also in this psychedelic dreamscape. And he was like, enjoy it, brother, and just like, yeah, tell me what you're seeing. And these colors were just so astounding. And then I started to recognize, I'm like, oh, that's why everything was unfolding the way it did, and because the mushrooms and the M were supposed to kick in as this musical performance was beginning. Because everything is synchronized in our universe. Everything from the the oxygen that the trees emit, to every droplet of water that's drifting in every river and ocean and lake, to every bird that's flying through the sky and every ant that's digging a hole in the ground. It's all synchronized. All of it's interconnected. It's all working. And then that's just, I'm referring to the Earth, but then that extends to stars that are 14 billion light years away. All of it is happening together. And then beyond that, and in other dimensions. And I was really being shown this. So I was about to lay back, and I thought I was just going to melt into the music. And one of the things about Mar de Leva is that all of their music is improvised. So Eduardo sits there with his laptop, a microphone, some other musical instruments, and he has, I don't know how many tracks open on Ableton, but he's improvising and playing live and somewhat conducting and orchestrating, and the sitar player is playing what he wants and responding, and similarly with the violinist. So none of it's scripted. They don't know what they're about to do, and they just make eye contact with each other, and it is a mystical experience to watch the three of them perform. And I thought I was just going to melt into the music, but then Misty came and picked me up, because she and I are dancing, soul siblings of dance, and she picked me up. And then Matt came over and pulled my shirt off, and then I let go. Like, the music started playing me like I was an instrument, and my body was moving in ways that just like the music was flowing through me, in a manner unprecedented. And that's saying a lot for someone who dances as much as I do and who totally lets go, but this was on a totally new level. And I was exploring infinite and multi-dimensions, surrounded by beings of the most profound colors and the most profound visual beauty. these beings that were like rotating upwards, and I would look down and then I would look upwards and I would just ascend and they would ascend. They would go, and then they would pull me up with them and they would be rotating and they would be showing me and they would be co-creating the music with Eduardo, the sitar player, and the violinist. They were all working together. And, you know, the musicians weren't consciously aware of what was occurring. I could see everything that was being orchestrated together, and I would periodically open my eyes and see the musicians just looking at each other, and it would make me cry because they're all in love. Like their musical performance is an expression of them being in love with one another, and it's so beautiful to witness and to be a part of and to co-create with. And then after songs, and I mean, I don't have words to describe the way the music sounds, but it's the greatest ever. And then in between two of the songs, Eduardo said on the microphone, he's like, I just want you guys to know that the three of us met and our music is simply an expression of the love between us, and we're in love and this is what we're sharing. And um, I was with everything. Like the colors I was seeing, I would love to be able to visually articulate this in film or animation, because colors that we do not see in the third dimension or with our light spectrum, they aren't part of it. Um, at least not to the visible spectrum the spectrum visible to the human eye, which represents only 1% of the electromagnetic frequency. But these colors are just so miraculous, and there are beings everywhere around us, interacting with us, interacting with everything. And they were showing me too. They're like, "Look, the sun's gonna start rising in an hour, and like these are some of the colors that the music is painting with it. Like the music was creating the sunrise." And I'm not speaking metaphorically. This is literal. And I recognize it might be a far out concept to think that the music can create the clouds in the sky, but just really sit with it and think about how it actually can, because it does. And your thoughts create the sky around you and the weather and all of it. It's all working in symbiosis. And then okay, so I'll just backtrack a bit. Earlier that day, on New Year's Eve, I woke up and meditated and expressed gratitude and acknowledgement for all of the moments throughout 2017. And at the end of my meditation, which was probably about an hour long, I entered death. I experienced death, and it's so peaceful and so beautiful. And then during this Mardaleva set, I entered into death again. So I was in with all these colorful beings, and I wish I had the words to express what they're like, but they're so extremely different from three-dimensional reality that like it is challenging to describe them. But they're so beautiful and so cool. Like it's just so fascinating that these things exist all around us, and they're accessible to everyone. It's not. I don't have some special power. It's just a willingness and an openness, and everyone can do this. And it's just I'm seeing through my third eye and whatever else. I'm simply open, and yeah, spending all these times with these beings and in these with these realms and interconnected, my body being played like an instrument and just moving to the music, and oh God, it felt so good. And then I entered death, and that's when I realized, oh, I fully let go of like, okay, I guess Natalie's not coming. And then in that moment, I feel this sexy body just wrap herself around me, and I turn and I open my eyes, and it's Natalie with like white face paint on, looking like the Swedish goddess she is. And immediately we just start love making and having sex and not even speaking and dancing with one another. And just so you know, our clothes aren't off, so we're not like having intercourse, but we are making love. And again, it was such magnetism and the total embodiment of the masculine and the total embodiment and surrendering of the feminine, and just like animals with so much love and like in this dream trance. And me recognizing that like we're in heaven right now, absolute heaven, and the music and the people and this experience, and having, you know, thinking that she wasn't going to come all night. And then the moment I release it entirely, she arrives, which seems to be the case for everything in this world, is that you got to be detached from it and appreciative. But then when you're let it go, that's when it comes. And she and I just, like, the most magnetic. The polarity is astounding. And then after hours, the sun starts to rise and the colors, like, these pink and orange massive clouds, like the biggest fucking clouds, emanating from the ocean, and it feels as though we're at the edge of the earth and simultaneously in heaven. Like, this, fuck, my words just do not come anywhere close to being able to articulate this scene. But just fucked. Like, so fucked, the way everything's integrating. And I look around and everyone's dressed like these multidimensional beings. Everyone's crying, looking at the sunrise, feeling the sounds, recognizing that we're all co-creating this together. And all of us realize that we're in heaven. And even when I'm with Natalie, at this point we're lying down and someone comes up to us and says, "Hey, how you doing, Adam and Eve?" And we just start laughing. And everyone's crying, and I look at Eduardo, and when I make eye contact with him, I flash back to the vision I had of us in the ancient future Egyptian setting where we were multidimensional royal beings, and recognized and remembered that we're doing it again. And yeah, we were, and we are in heaven. All of us are in heaven. It's and again, I'm not being metaphorical. I'm totally being literal. We live in heaven, and then we come down to share. But this is all of us, and we keep remembering, and we go back, because it's like enlightenment and nirvana, and then sharing and doing work and exploring, and then arriving there again, because it's incredibly fun. And I know it's an experience the vast majority of the population never arrives at, perhaps until death, but there are people who do it regularly, and we all can. And I think it all comes down to love and enjoyment and gratitude, and helping love. So, yeah. We exist in heaven, and it was the most special experience imaginable, and it still is. And throughout the rest of the experience, Natalie and I really deepened our connection and had some increasingly magnetic experiences. Actually, that morning, we laid down on this beach bed and beside one another, and she said to me, like, I can't keep my eyes open anymore. And I said, "You don't have to." And she started dozing off, closing her eyes, and I was holding her, and our heads were pressed together, and she started twitching because she was falling asleep. And as she's drifting, she allowed this, and my consciousness went inside of her, and I saw her essence, which is this aqua goddess entity that is water falling into and over and onto itself in this flowing web, super sensual, waving goddess entity that is never static, never stagnant, never the same. Whereas the masculine might be this stability, the feminine is this flow. And it is so beautiful, and the boundaries totally dissolved, whereby I became Natalie. I totally forgot who I was. Michael Sanders, I forgot. And I became her, and she invited me into that experience. And I've never had this before, but I've long had the theory that if you can be someone for a given moment, then you know everything about them, because in that given moment, the individual is the culmination of every experience that they've ever had. And I got to be her for what felt like eternity, but may have been about 30 minutes of Earth time. And I hope I'm articulating somewhat how special that is, to become someone else and to be allowed to become someone else. That's really, it's really special. And then Natalie started dreaming, and this, our minds, our consciousness started linking, and I heard these sounds, and they went like as though our consciousnesses were connecting in this telepathic, beyond telepathic, this merging. And I could see her dreams. I was fully awake, she was asleep and dreaming, and I could see her dreams with these colors that the best way I can describe them are pastel but more vibrant greens and pinks and purples. And there was this crescent moon and the sun that were coming together slowly, and then they converged and exploded outward to create these stars and these systems and these cosmoses and universes that were spreading outward infinitely, like the birthing process of the motherly feminine energy. And all of it amongst these pastel rainbow colors of infinite beauty and glory. And I was watching her dream, and it was the greatest honor to do that. And then she was kind of waking up as we were lying there, and I started whispering and licking her ear at the same time and speaking to her and articulating everything that I had experienced by being her and then experiencing her dreams. And I was speaking very poetically and like rhapsodically, and just flowing with and like reliving it, so that all the words were just coming out of my mouth while licking her ear and like turning her on and turning myself on. And then I slid my tongue in her ear and up into her brain to transmute and communicate and impart all of my conscious thoughts into her mind, and we synchronized, and she started orgasming and I started orgasming with my tongue up in her brain. And this experience lasted about 5 minutes, and then when I removed it, we both just started laughing because neither of us had done anything like that before. I didn't know that this was possible. Neither did she. I've never heard of something like this before, and it was so powerful. And yeah, like our bodies, our souls as well, seem to be magnets from like throughout space and time, and have found one another. And you know, it's not just a physical connection either. Like our conversations and our connection is powerfully deep and beautiful, and I'm sure we'll be exploring it further. And we did explore it a lot while in Tulum, with the most powerful lovemaking in the jungle showers, and like very wild and animalistic and like beautiful, and fucking so much polarity and passion, and like a couple of jungle animals. Yeah. And yeah, she's amazing. And so for the the next day, or we spent New Year's Day, everyone together and just like really bonding. There were like all these amazing conversations breaking out, a lot about the blockchain, a lot about ayahuasca. It was really this really funny sequence, and like hopefully this doesn't sound conceited or anything, but I was sitting amongst a group of 6 amazing people, all of whom inspire me to no end, and I just sat there quietly for half an hour eating this delicious food served by Habitas. And they were all talking about ayahuasca. 2 of the guys are shamans in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and they run retreats. And then 2 of the people were like hedge fund managers. And then this one guy, Manny, he's an ex-professional soccer player, and now he's super into blockchain as well. And I was listening to all of them talk about ayahuasca for about half an hour, and then diving deep, and then I mentioned something, and they're like, "Oh, have you tried it as well?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've written a book about it." And they're all like, "What the fuck? Like, you haven't said anything." And then they asked me to share my story, and like I just dove into that, and they were all very enamored by it. And increasingly, I have this understanding of how to tell stories with people so that I know exactly what they need to hear because I empathize so deeply with them. So it's always a little bit different depending on who the individual is because everyone needs to experience something a little bit different or wants to experience something a little bit different. Yeah. Then the next day on January 2nd, we went to do this Temezcal, this sweat lodge out in the jungle, and then the cenote, which are these underwater freshwater reservoirs, or sorry, underground freshwater reservoirs with blue lights, and like we were in these caves and we were underneath the jungle floor where the trees were converging together, and then their roots were going down into the water down beneath the cave, and there's all these fossils, and like we're swimming around a cave with these lights and these guides, and like they were only discovered these regions 30 years ago when foreign explorers with flashlights and professional divers came to investigate them. And so we're navigating through these caves in the dark with lights that are stunningly beautiful on the inside, and they recently shot the film Peter Pan there, so like you can get a sense for how mystical and magical it is. And yeah, and then we came out, and they had brought all those carpets I had mentioned earlier, the Habitas crew, and laid them out in the jungle. And Arutani, which is this insane DJ, this 22-year-old Venezuelan guy who lives in Switzerland now, and he was playing the funkiest fucking amazing. Funky's not the right word. It was like whew, deep and powerful. I knew the moment I met him as we were in the bathroom, and I'm like, oh yeah, obviously you're gonna be the greatest musician ever because I have always this deep bond with the best musicians in the world. Something in my soul is so deeply connected with music, and yeah, he played the greatest set, and they cooked us this feast, and then those mushroom chocolates found us again, and I was like, just magic. And then we went back to Habitas, and when we got there, the restaurant had all these red fabrics hung, and there was this impromptu aerial performance by these acrobats who own House of Yes in New York, and just it was amazing to see how seamless everything about the Habitas experience was. Like, you know, you go into the sweat lodge and then the cenote, and then whoa, there's a party in the middle of the jungle with one of this most amazing DJ, and then like there's mezcal and mushrooms and delicious food and like everything you could possibly want, and like the connections with the people. That's like Habitas means home, and it really is. And there's going to be a series of them throughout the world, like different clubhouses, different hotels. There's one opening up in the African safari this year. 45,000 hectares of like wildlife and tribes living on it, and then like a small, or like not a small, but like a hotel on it as well. But like 45,000 hectares takes hours to drive across, so it's vast. And yeah, and then on my last morning there, I sit down, and so there's this woman at Habitas named Barbara. She's from Buenos Aires in Argentina, and she and I have been friends on Instagram for 3 years, and we've never met in person, but we happen to be at Habitas at the same time. And we always we share a special bond. We were connected through ayahuasca, and her friend that was the one who invited Barbara, her friend's name's Flor, and Flor is a 5-MeO DMT shaman, and she and I sat down on the last morning and dove deep, and she is on a mission, a beautiful one, to bring this medicine to the whole world, because like she knows, like I know, like anyone who's done it knows, is that this is literally the ultimate substance on earth that can cure anything. And increasingly, there's a number of medical doctors who are realizing this too. Like Flora works with a medical doctor who walked away from his Western medical practice because he's like 5-MeO. It can cure cancer. It can cure any disease. It can change the whole universe. We're talking about something that is called the God molecule, and it's astounding that there hasn't been that much research done into it yet. But Flora is actually one of the people leading the way for clinical research of this, and it's super powerful. Anyone who's done it knows, and it's really beautiful. So, and we're talking about the merging of like the cannabis space with other plant medicines and the crypto space. So, we spent 2 hours really connecting, and I know it's the start of something special. But yeah, I don't even think that this my words are capturing even like 10% of the magic, but I hope if you feel something from it. And just um, yeah, Tulum is it's a vortex and a really special place. So I'll leave it there, and I love you. Mm. So I just want to add a quick little addendum, and it has to do a lot with Mac. Um, and Mac's last name is Murphy, and his father founded the Esalen Institute in Big Sur. And the Esalen Institute is largely the nascent point, the origin of the psychedelic and hippie movement um, prior to the 60s even starting. And so his dad, along with a friend and business partner whose name I'm drawing a blank on right now, but they were at Stanford. They dropped out. They went to India to an ashram, and then they came back to California and wanted to combine Eastern practices with Western practices, and not simply in theory, but in actual practice. So they started combining yoga and meditation and psychedelic exploration and sound and music and all sorts of different modalities, and that's the place where the Beatles went before they were famous and after they were famous, and the Rolling Stones went before they were famous and after they were famous. And some of my biggest inspirations, like people like Alan Watts and Terence McKenna and Jack Kerouac. I had read Jack Kerouac when I was a teenager, his book On the Road, and for the longest time it was my favorite book. It still is one of my favorite books, and it's largely one of the biggest inspirations for why I wanted to write a book in the first place at a young age. And so the Esalen Institute has always had a special place in my heart. It's also the ending location of perhaps my favorite television show of all time, Mad Men. In this surprise twist, they end up at Esalen, and it is. I've always seen it as like this place of like fairy tale magic, and so it seems incredible that I become brothers with Mac at Habitas at home, um, with the guy whose dad founded Esalen, and I'm intending to go there in February because Mac and Zach, and Zach's a partner on Habitas, they work on this event called Return, and they host these really special events whereby during which they assemble a group of, let's say, experts or people who are seriously interested in a given field. And they've done 8 so far, and this next one in February is about cryptocurrency, and the blockchain. So they're assembling a small group of people at Esalen. They've invited me to join that, and yeah, it's really incredible. And then the last thing I want to mention are these noises. So when I was lying with Natalie on the bed, and when we merged consciousness, and I became her, and then I was able to observe and experience her dreams. After a while, we were like being really animalistic and playful and sexual, and I started making these noises which just flowed through me, and I'll do my best to mimic them now. I will see if I can, but they were something like which I'm not doing them exactly the same now, and I know they sound weird, but I wasn't creating them at the time. They were simply flowing through me, and they were this powerfully healing sound. Like they were just making her giggle and laugh and like remove blockages. And then later on, she fell asleep, and I was walking around the Habitas land and like moving my hands like this, and I could feel energy and like magnetism and direction as to where my body was supposed to be of the greatest service. It was like those wormholes that emanate from the chests of the characters in the film Donnie Darko, if you've seen that. They're basically like wormholes that predict the future, and I was feeling that in my hands. It's like, okay, where should I go? Who should I interact with? And the feeling brought me to Tyler, and this amazing angel of a woman. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on her name right now. But I walked up to them. We all smiled at one another. We hugged, and I put my head in between their two chests, and then the sound started again, and I was like, sounded way more beautiful at the time. But and from my perspective, I went into their bodies, and I could see their cores, their hearts, and it was all light. And I went inside of it, and these noises were like clearing any gunk and blockages, and we were in this space for like maybe a couple minutes, and then when I pulled back, I had this big smile on my face, and I looked at Tyler, and I looked at this beautiful woman, and they were both crying, and then they both started laughing, and then the woman was like, oh my goodness, you just cleared so many blockages and so much darkness and gave so much love to the darkness. Because she's like, I left Habitas in the middle of the night and I went out exploring Tulum, and the vibe just wasn't the same. There was all this darkness and I kind of felt scared. And then you just did that and made that noise and it's all gone. And then Tyler started waxing poetry about how beautiful the sunrise it was and how we were creating it together and that we're all co-creating it. The music, the people listening, the trees, the ocean. Similar to what I had been thinking, and he and I hadn't verbally communicated this with one another, but he said exactly what I already knew and had experienced, and that we live in heaven and co-create it all together. And then I was feeling like this and going around, and then I found Misty, and she and I just embraced in like a multi-minute hug and just of pure love, and all we really said was I love you, and just embraced one another so deeply. And then I moved around again, and I walked around. I was actually looking for Eduardo because I wanted to just tell him he's incredible and that he's fucked up, because like the music, his gift that he's giving to the world is so profound that like there aren't any words for it, and he's aware of like what he's doing on some level, and it's astounding. And then so I was moving around again, and then I walked up, and this big guy named Jeff just came up to me. He's like, hey man, we haven't actually spoken, we haven't met, my name is Jeff. Gives me a big hug. I make the noise again in his chest. I go into his heart. It's light. He pulls back. He has tears in his eyes, and he says to me, he's like, from one man to another, and one medicine man, he's like, I just want to let you know that you are the most embodied and unified and enlightened being I have ever encountered. It's like the way you move and the way you are is something so truly special. And I received what he said. And I closed my eyes, and it just brought tears and a smile to my face. Because it's a very powerful comment, you know, and when I was younger, I think a lot of us do this when we receive really powerful compliments. We often want to just reciprocate and say like, oh, you're so wonderful too. But the magnitude with which he was communicating to me, I simply received it because I didn't want to negate at all the profundity of what he was sharing with me. And it was truly the most humbling thing I've ever heard. And so I was deeply honored by that. And so yeah, I just wanted to add that. And again, I love you, and thank you.